Hello and welcome to today's Monday update. I am out of the COVID penalty box. I took a test yesterday afternoon and it was negative. Thankfully, those who did have COVID in our household had very, very minor symptoms, and everyone's now at 100%. Thanks to everybody for their care and concern while we were recovering. Now, our family participated in worship yesterday through the live stream worship service. And we heard in Pastor Davis's sermon at Meridian campus, we heard about how Jesus gave good news as he preached in his hometown. We heard about how Jesus proclaimed the words of the prophet Isaiah, saying, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, because he has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim liberty to the captives and recovering of the sight to the blind, to set at liberty those who are oppressed, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor." In these words, Jesus gave good news. He gave the good news that he had come to take our sin and shame away. Pastor Davis talked about this as give and take. Jesus gives life and hope when he takes our sin and brokenness. Now, this is a powerful and really a memorable way to think about the gospel. Well, I've got two updates for you. First, tonight, we have our Assembly of Voters meeting on Zoom at 7 p.m. We'll be doing several things with this meeting. There'll be an update from the chair of the call committee. Then the call committee will put forth their recommendations for calling a candidate from Concordia Seminary. The proposed plan is to issue a preferred call, which means that we submit 3 candidates according to the order of our preference. That is, we'll have a candidate who is our first preference, and then a candidate who is our second preference and our third preference. This is similar to how St. Luke issued their call to a seminary candidate back in 2012, when y'all got stuck with me. Well, then we're going to submit that to the voters for a vote. And then we'll also do one more thing at this meeting. We're going to ask the voters to give the call committee authority to give additional recommendations to the Michigan district without changing the order of the candidates. Let me explain that a bit. The call committee received the list of call candidates without enough time to schedule interviews with those candidates before this voters meeting tonight. In order to stay in the running for receiving a candidate from the seminary, we had to have our call submitted by this week. So there's a tight timeline as to when we received the list of candidates and when we had to have this vote prepared. Unfortunately, interviews weren't able to be scheduled in between that timeline. So the call committee is going to be doing interviews with the candidates in early February. Now, they'll be doing that via Zoom. Following these interviews, the call committee will have a much better idea of the candidates and how well they would fit into the ministry needs of St. Luke. So the proposed plan would be to allow the call committee to give its recommendations to the district after these interviews are done. For instance, the call committee may do the interviews and find out that they'd like to leave the call ordering exactly as we have it. Or the call committee may determine that the candidate number 3 is really not a good fit for ministry at St. Luke. And so if the voters authorize the call committee to do so, then we would not need to have another Assembly of Voters meeting for these sorts of things to happen. Now, if the call committee wants to change the ordering of the candidates, that is, if they want to make candidate number 2 the number 1 candidate, then we would plan to have another voters meeting for this to be ratified. Either way, we'll have either an informational meeting or an Assembly of Voters meeting on February 17th at 6:30 p.m. After the call committee does its interviews. Now, I know all of this sounds kind of complicated. I know that there's lots of moving parts here. But here's the best news. The Holy Spirit is better at this stuff than we are. So we lean in, we do our work as a voters in the voters meeting, we do our work as a call committee, we interview candidates, but then we also trust that the Holy Spirit is in it and already knows the next associate pastor that we need here at St. Luke. As Jesus tells us, the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. Therefore, pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send out laborers into his harvest. Let me invite you to follow these words of Jesus and pray. Pray that the Spirit would be at work in our meeting tonight and that the Holy Spirit would be at work in the weeks ahead. Finally, one quick reminder, our ministry summit is happening this Saturday at Meridian Campus from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. If you haven't signed up yet, today is the day, the final day that we are able to have that happen. So please sign up, send me an email, or you can sign up following the link that's provided in the Monday email. We need a count as to who's planning to come so we can get the lunches ordered. Thanks for taking the time to watch this update. God's blessings to you this week as you live knowing the peace and the power of the cross.